We look at exchanging money to a business as punishment. But then when we go into business, we want people to exchange money with us. And that is such a breakdown conceptually and culturally in our community, where we should not be approaching business from that sense. When we have businesses and we have a black business in our community or wherever else, that it should be a badge of honor, and we should be wanting to patronize that business because we want people who are familiar with us, close to us, to succeed. Welcome to another episode of Classes in Session. I'm your host, Professor Devin Robinson, being brought to you by Black and in Business Media, Urban Business Lending Group, and Urban Business Institute. Now, many of you out there have businesses, small businesses. You're starting up your businesses. You're in different phases of your business, small business or entrepreneurship career. And you have the challenge of getting clients or customers, or, that's the what is called in business the critical incident, the area where you're trying. It's a vulnerable area of where the client or the customer actually exchanges their funds for you to solve their problems. Now, I have a lot to discuss today around this, and much of what I will be discussing, I know it's far easier to say in theory than it is to actually execute. But I will do my best to try to break this stuff down, especially for businesses where you have yourself. You're like the owner operator. That it has its pros and cons. In some areas, it's really good. In some areas, it's really bad because you need the help. You need to scale. But then when it's just you, the quality tends to stay strong. It's not challenged because it's you. You know exactly how stuff needs to be done. So that's a lot of time for service-based businesses. For product-based businesses, again, depending on where you are in the supply chain, as far as the product business, if you're the manufacturer, or maybe you could be the retailer just reselling products. There's so many different areas that is important to assess. But I'll try my best to kind of break some stuff down. But I'll be remiss if I didn't really discuss, when it comes to business and entrepreneurship and all that stuff, remiss to discuss those specific elements in our community and how those things affect how we run business and how we do things. Now, there's some etiquette that we have in our business community, and a lot of times we have situations where we're maybe like in a service-based business and you're a service provider, you have the challenge of people asking you for, whether it's advice. Let's just say you're a lawyer or a doctor. They're just asking for advice, free. No one wants to pay, right? Because they're your friend. That's a very, very saddening part of the culture that we have, where we look at when someone has a business, we look at that person as a benefit to us in the sense of we should not have to pay, right? So we would go to a restaurant and go into our friend's restaurant, go in there and say, I should have a free meal because my friend owns this restaurant, versus I should pay full price because this is my friend's restaurant, right? So you really have to really think about those dynamics that we have in our society, because for a large part, we're in survival mode, right? So we never really, I don't say we never really, because that's absolute, and I don't like to speak in absolutes, but a lot of times, a lot of people of our community, we're in survival mode. So survival mode tends to put us in a scarcity mindset, meaning we're trying to get things at the lowest price possible, many times because we have the lowest wages, or we're constantly between jobs, or we're trying to get this stuff for free. So then we add someone we know, a friend or relative, in the equation of having those things, whether it's goods and services that they're providing to the community, and we stay in that survival mode, feeling like the way for us to get ahead is to go to them because we can get a discount or we could get it for free. That is a very poor approach, and I've said it many times in training classes, consulting, other episodes, that you do not get wealthy off of friends, you get wealthy off of strangers. And that's because of our community dynamics. In our community, we tend to look at the businesses of the people we're close to as a benefit, and that's because we look at doing business as almost like a punishment, right? We look at going somewhere and have to pay for something as a punishment. So we often tried, and I've done it, I mean, as a kid, and you know, not having a evolved understanding of economics, business economics, workplace economics. I've done it. I've snuck into to clubs or parties, and when there was a toll, when you had to pay, or, you know, I see even today grown people, grown entrepreneurs going to events and you know, giving away tickets or wristbands, sliding them off outside and be like, hey, you could take this. Because we look at exchanging money to a business as punishment. But then when we go into business, we want people to exchange money with us. And that is such a breakdown conceptually and culturally in our community, where we should not be approaching business from that sense. We really should be looking at our friends and families' businesses, and many times black-owned businesses. This is Black and in Business Media. Talk about black businesses. The largest employer of black people are corporations. The second largest employer is government. It's not the same for Asian community, Hispanic communities, and even the white communities. I say corporate, but corporate is white, right? So they're employing themselves a lot of times. And white meaning anyone from European descent, right? We're not understanding that when we have businesses and we have a black business in our community or wherever else, that it should be a badge of honor, and we should be wanting to patronize that business and be a consumer, customer, or client of that business. They're all different. Won't get into that in this episode, but they're all different. We should want to patronize those businesses because we want people who are familiar with us, close to us, to succeed. Their success then spreads to our success. Again, that's a whole other animal, because we would tend to feel like someone else's success is our failure. It is not zero sum in our community. It is not zero sum. We all can benefit, and you are benefiting as a customer. Unfortunately, we often try to become clients without paying. Meaning we have the person, they've put in the work, they've put in the investment, whether it's time or money, to get their business established. Maybe went many years to college to become a doctor, lawyer, passed the bar exam, they're practicing. For us to constantly want this free consultation and be almost like a quasi client without having to exchange the funds to be an official client. So that in itself is a poor approach in our community, and the etiquette is often not good. So that even is a breakdown in how we approach things. So I just implore you, as a person who may need services, and don't, this is another piece, don't view patronizing a black business or a friend's or relative's business as charity, because that's another thing we like to do. We like to say, I'm going to support this business, I'm about to support such and such, but we don't say that when we pull up to the corporate companies to shop for our groceries or put gas in our car. We just do it. We don't say that we're supporting them. So we have to get over this hump culturally in how we approach business, and then we have to get over the hump with the etiquette when it comes to business. So I'll take another step, because I'm trying to break down a few things before we really get into the meat of the matter. excuse me, we also need to make sure that we're not trying to, because I said, we tend to want to be clients without paying. We also try to get into this mentorship relationship with people that may not want to mentor us. Like the mentor has to accept mentoring you. And I'm gonna break that down. I'm really kind of like pensive in my thoughts right now because I gotta break this down properly. Someone who's largely successful. I have a moderate level of success. I wouldn't consider myself widely and largely successful. Maybe to the average person, but as I look at other successful people, that's they're worth 8 and 9 figures. I would look at some individuals that are supremely successful. I would not approach them because there's a thing with networking, right? We're trying to get to the right person. We're trying to get to the right person, but we're not trying to get to the right person within ourselves. Like, you should be focusing on trying to become and get to the right person as far as your level in life, and not just trying to get to the right person who is at that level in life, that other person. Because we often would go and just do the networking thing, try to get to them, and then once we get to them, then we're like, hey, I got some questions, or I really need you to help me with this and help me with that, right? And this person, you may be a burden to this person. And yes, it doesn't sound good. Yes, that's not politically correct. Yes, that's taboo, because our community is filled with activism and nonprofits and charities, and the whole idea of we've been oppressed, we've come a long way, and we should just be out here helping each other. That is true. But sometimes the best way to help someone is to not help that person. And the more help we tend to get, sometimes it runs away with us, but then we're trying to be entrepreneurs at the same time. Entrepreneurs must take accountability and must invest. Whether it's time, money, you got to invest. What I'm saying is, there are people who have been on the journey and have reached the supreme level of success. The conversation that you're trying to have with them is pretty infantile, where even if they give you tidbits and nuggets of stuff, unless they take you on as a mentee and carry that relationship where they know they're developing you, you're not going to really get information that can just change your life just overnight. It is a process. So again, we got to watch that when it comes to the etiquette in our community, not just trying to grab hold of people because we see they're largely successful. We're trying to get with them. We get pictures with them. We're really trying to get them to build a bond or a relationship with us. But there's some other things that you need to be doing before you really try to dig into that. So let's kind of get started now. One of the 5 major things that entrepreneurs need, that is an obstacle for the black entrepreneur, is the high-paying customer. The high-paying customer tends to be a very difficult person to attain, and many times that person is difficult to attain because, or that customer or client is difficult to attain because we're looking for high-paying customers, but we're delivering low-quality services. So in order for you to attract high-paying customers, it is not just targeting them or going into their community. It is also you building your fulfillment process, whether it's goods or services, to the level that you go ahead and are able to retain that person. Now, who's your customer? The naive entrepreneur would say everybody. It is not everybody. Everybody is not your customer. Yes, everybody needs to eat, but everybody doesn't need to eat at your restaurant. Some people have food allergies that are in your restaurant. Some people don't like your cuisine. So it's not because everybody does this thing means that everybody is your customer. And those are some of the things that you really need to break down, right? Then we have, okay, the customer or the client. What's the customer? What's the client? There's a difference. A customer is someone paying for products. A client is someone paying for services. And it is long-term, ongoing services. A lot of times it's intimate services. Those are what's considered clients, right? So let's just kind of break that down as well. What about prospects? There's people talk about leads, people talk about prospects. Leads are people that come into your process. They become a prospect when you start communicating with them. And now you start communicating. Now they've continued to show interest, and you're working with them. That's a prospect. A lead is just a person that just showed up, maybe in your, if it's online and you collect them, you have the sales funnel and all that other stuff I'll get into in other episodes when we're talking about sales and stuff. But that's a lead. So a lead is someone you haven't spoken to yet. Prospect is someone that you have spoken to. What are the type of leads? You got 3 different types of leads. You got cold, warm, and hot. Cold leads could be a list that you bought. If you bought a list, which I don't really recommend, I can explain to you in further on how to get people coming to you. That's a process as well. But cold leads are like if someone buys a list and they start calling people. Those leads are cold. They didn't know you were going to call them. They don't know anything about your business. You just happen to be able to get a list because these people are, maybe they fit the mold, or they inquired somewhere else about a similar business, similar product, and then you just jumped in and bought the list, or they sold the information to you. That's a cold lead. Warm leads are people who have come to you. They have not expressed interest outside of coming to you. So they actually maybe opted in to a newsletter or something like that. They will be considered warm. A hot lead is someone who's ready to purchase. They're saying, look, I saw your thing. I'm ready to purchase. I'm ready to go. And then, of course, you make contact with them, making them a prospect and then taking them further to become a client. So how do you target your clients? There are three approaches to targeting clients. One, the main ways are: 1, through intellect; 2, through income; and 3, through interest. Now, these are what's called demographics, right? There's demographics and there's psychographics. Psychographics is the purchasing behavior of people. The demographics is just the raw data of someone. And if you have not noticed, we're talking about relationships with clients and customers. Those are the 3 main approaches. So now you got to look at, and this is of course, you've already determined what your business is, who you're going to serve, prices and all that stuff has a lot to do with it, but we're going to just stay close to the relationship with the client, right? So you look at those demographics. Those are 3 main ways that you can you target a client, right? Again, intellect, income, interest. Those are 3 main ways for you to target them. Get out there, do your marketing campaigns, make your stuff happen. So now you're in the prospecting phase with your prospect, and there are 2 main ways you prospect them. Let's get to it. Discussing their problems, and you discussing your services. You got people that in business, it depends. This is not what I'm saying, is not consulting. It is not, it's information purposes. It's not one size fits all. Everybody should take this approach because it really depends on your business, depends on what it is, that you're offering, whether goods or services. But you in many cases, you want to stay away from getting too far off task. And I'll get into that a little later in this episode, because those things can hurt you as well when you're discussing certain things when you're prospecting, okay? So in your prospecting, you're really trying to determine, like, what are their problems? Figure out what are their problems, and then you're sizing up their problems up against your services, right? Remember, you're in business to solve problems. So everyone that goes to a business has a problem that they're trying to solve, whether they're hungry, so they go into a restaurant, whether they got a package they needed to go across the country, so they go to FedEx or UPS or the post office. Everyone has a problem they're trying to solve, and they solve that problem with exchanging money to solve that problem. So you have to really have that discussion over their problems, and then you're discussing your services, and then you're really trying to determine at that point, do those things align, right? As I'm, flushing through these ideas. So then you're really trying to figure out, do they really align? Okay, so now you prospected the client. It's time to bring them on board. Bringing your clients on board, 3 main things I would suggest. 1, you want to have a checklist. 2, you want to have an orientation. And 3, you want to have an assessment. Because there are a couple of things that happens there. With the checklist, it gets them prepared for becoming your client, and you have that checklist explaining the things that they need to have in place to become that client. If it's largely if it's a service-based thing. And then, of course, you want to have an orientation. Now, let's stick a pin in this part for a second. This is not, okay, this is not a very scalable thing if you're the owner operator. So if you're the one providing the orientation, there's a couple of things we got to flush out. 1, we need to determine if the information you need to provide to them, will you be consistent? That's the first thing. Because believe it or not, you may think that you're saying the same thing each time, and you're not. You may be in a different mood. You may have an argument with someone. You may have got cut off in traffic. Your nerves may be bad because you almost got in an accident. You do this orientation. You may forget information. You may deliver it differently, that kind of stuff, right? That's one issue. 2, if it's such a big operation that you have that you're not the only person doing it, you may have someone else now doing the orientation. So I own a couple consulting companies around different types of businesses. So one of the things that I have in place that has been phenomenal, I even do this with onboarding workers, is videos. So you really want to shoot. So, like, for example, so I taught college for about 8 years, and teaching college and having to be there a certain time, and you're going into high cerebral type content, like economics. We're talking about industrial economics, labor economics, criminal economics, microeconomics, government economics. These are the courses that I'm teaching, and I'm starting to notice that I'm on my game at certain points and not at other points. So then I had to learn as an entrepreneur, because I was owning businesses even while I was teaching college, and it's something I love doing. I actually stopped because of the time, not because I didn't like it. I love the transfer of knowledge to people. But I started to notice that I had to learn myself, and where are my peak moments? Where are my moments that I'm rich in my flow, in my knowledge? One of those moments that I'm rich in my thinking instead, and creative in my ideas. You have individuals that, like creatives, right? So I'm also considered a creative. I write books. I create marketing paraphernalia and do all this stuff for my business, and then at the same time I'm creating content, curriculum, research. I'm left and right brain. But I had to learn, like artists do. They know they we've been wanting an album from Andre 3000, right, for a lot of years, right? And I think I saw a video recently. This guy was out in Japan with a flute. You know what I'm saying? He was blowing a flute in Japan, and he just keeps saying, like, he doesn't have the inspiration. He's not there to create. And so many people are like, come on, we need an album, Dre. But that's how a lot of creatives put out trash content, because they're going after quantity and not quality, right? They're not letting themselves like really flourish before they create that content. Get in this mode, like, it's hats off, like hats off to artists like Drake and Lil Wayne and these people who've put out content consistently, and they may have little down moments on some albums or some songs, but overall been very consistent. That's a lot of potency, right? And not saying the exact same things. It's a lot of potency. Meanwhile, you have some people, they can put out a stinger of the first album and then not so good after that. Like, it starts to taper off, especially when they're trying to do it too often back to back. Like following the Nas concept, he wait a few years before he puts out content. It's why the argument with Tupac and Biggie is not really a real argument. People can get mad at me now. Why am I bringing up Tupac and Biggie? That's our treasured artists, right? But I don't think it's a real argument that we really should have, because Biggie did 2 albums. And magnificent lyricist, but he had 2 albums. He wasn't even alive for the second one, and he didn't have a lot of content coming after. Tupac, on the other hand, put out a lot of content, from the acting to the poetry to the music. For us to be putting those 2 against each other is really, that's kind of unfair. They're not in the same league, and Biggie didn't have a chance to show his consistency over a long period of time, right? Don't unsubscribe for that. Come on, don't do that. Move your finger from the button. Just move the mouse. And like Jay-Z could do it, right? He has consistency over a long period of time. You have to find, if you're creative, when your best moments are. It's not all the time. I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle in their business because they're running their businesses off of a lot of emotions. They're not really in the right space to be doing certain tasks, that kind of stuff. Like, you really have to think through the entrepreneurship and the business journey. That's what I'm saying. Just talking to someone who's successful is not enough. You got to go through like a process of really getting there, right? So I believe in like orientation stuff or checklists and stuff, because if you create those things in moments when you are operating at your highest level, and then you're presenting that to whether customers, clients, or your staff in a video form, the orientation I'm talking about, then there's some consistency and they're getting the best material. So bringing them on board with the orientation thing, I just wanted to stick a pin in it for a second and kind of like examine that piece for a moment, because that's important for you to understand. Like, I'm saying the next thing is the orientation, but I want you to kind of put that in context of how you decide to do that orientation. If it's just you in the business providing it, there's more chance of better consistency than if you have your staff doing it that you've trained. But if you really do it like in a video format or audio recording or whatever, when in your best moment, that's better consistency. And of course, the final one, like I said, is an assessment. So an assessment kind of gives your customer, your client, an exam. So it's like so an assessment would be an example of you going to the doctor's office and they're giving you the forms to become a patient, right? Patient is like a client, right? And those forms that you got to fill out ask you a whole bunch of questions. Ask you about medications you're on, illnesses you've had in the past, allergies you may have, maybe certain reactions to certain procedures or types of procedures you've had. That's an assessment. They're trying to determine where you are in your health journey, what may be good for you, what may not be good suggestions, what suggestions may work, all that stuff you want to determine as you're bringing someone on to be a client, right? So that's the onboarding part of you bringing someone on to be a client. So now they're onboarding, and now you got to relate with them, right? So the relationship with the client is five main things you want to have relationship with your client. One, use the most scalable form of communication. I know you see recently there's a lot of technology being used. We have from jot forms to calendars to scheduling mechanisms, chats. There are a lot of different tools that are being used now to communicate with clients. And looking at your business, you want to use the most scalable form. What do I mean by scalable form? That if you have a rush, you can still service that client. So like I mentioned, calendars or emails, right? You can deal with 15 emails from 15 different clients much easier than you can deal with 15 phone calls from 15 different clients at the same time. It's a much shorter time to answer the emails, and it's probably more consistent, more concise. You can give them more information, especially if you have like frequently asked questions stuff. It's like templates you can quickly answer. I use in my businesses like my businesses are so elaborately set up. It's a lot in there that we use. We have over 50 different apps that we use to run my consulting business that clients maneuver in these different parts, right? So we also have like, how you can use email systems, right? Some people may use MailChimp or Constant Contact. Infusionsoft is a real elaborate one. There's a lot of them out there, and people use them for sales funnels and nurturing. But you can also use them for client communication, meaning you can use that to trigger actions when clients reach a certain point to send them emails and prepare them for certain things, right? So I went to the dentist the other day, and on the day of my appointment, on my way to the appointment, I got a text message, and it was giving me instructions. These instructions that I received on my text message were the same instructions that I got on my prior appointment. And my prior appointment was still kind of pandemic-esque era. So it was instructions saying, you pull up to the parking lot, you click this link, you do this, you fill this out, blah, blah. And it happened again the same day. For the next appointment on that day. I got the same thing. This time they said, you don't have to do the form, just come on inside, we have your stuff. But that's information being relayed that can help with your process and as you're communicating with clients. If it's a long service period that you have with them, then you should have even more instructions on what they should do, lists they should, checklists they should have, all that stuff, right? That's one of the things. Make sure you have a scalable form of communication. Two, I talk about this all the time. Anyone been following me, heard me say this many times. I teach this to my staff as well. You want to be personable, but not personal. So I said earlier that I was going to talk a little bit about this. You want to be personable, but not personal. Again, our community, the culture of our community, we're tribal people. We love getting them close. We love hugging on each other. But we really have to do business, right? And sometimes that does not allow for too much of the kumbaya if you're trying to move people through your process, move people through your line, and sometimes that comes back to bite you, especially when you're too personal. When you become personal with someone and they're sharing stuff, when you think about you having a therapist and you build that connection and you get really close to them, and now that therapist is gone and that's your business, or let's just say you're the client and that's your therapist and they're gone, you're probably gonna want to be gone too. You're gonna want to know where that therapist went so you can follow them. A lot of times that happens in business, even as you as owners and entrepreneurs. You got to be careful in how you condition your clients. You don't want to condition them to be so super personal with you. They got to know and understand. We all got to know and understand that we're doing business with your business, right? We support you, yes, but we're doing business with your business. We see those golden arches and we go. We don't even know who the franchise owner is. We see the QT sign and we stop and put that gas in. We see that green emblem, Starbucks. What is that? I don't even know what he is. What is that image? I don't know who that person is. Who he's a king or a pauper? I don't know what he is. When we see that sign, we pull over. We want to go get our Frappuccino. That's because we're doing business with that business. You have to also ensure that people are comfortable doing business with your business and not get too comfortable doing business with you, because you put your business in a vulnerable spot. That leads me to the next point, which is underscore of this previous one. Be friendly, but not friends. I said earlier, you get wealthy from strangers, not friends. Strangers often prefer to do business with you. They don't know your background. They don't know your personal life. They don't know how much you're stunting from their sale or from their patronage. We often don't want to know that, don't want to see that. And we rather just, pay that money and go. So you got to be as friendly as you can. But we, even as the customer, the client, and as the entrepreneur, but we have to understand that it is not imperative for our friend or let's just say not a friend, the person who owns that business to be our friend. We put unreasonable expectations on our own businesses. They come into the community, immediately they start showing up expecting you to sponsor the local kids little league team and contribute to this charity and this nonprofit. The minute we show up, we ain't even got our first sale yet. That's the kind of stuff we do to ourselves. But the CVS pharmacies, the Walgreens, they pop up, and you know what we do instead? We go looking for jobs. We go there looking for jobs, or we go there looking for our products. We don't go there looking for handouts or expectations from them to do business with us. So us, as customers and clients, again, we got to not seek the expectation for people to necessarily be our friends. I've patronized entrepreneurs' businesses, and I'm there, and they're wanting to give me stuff free. And I'm like, no, I'm going to pay for it. You know who I'd rather get it free from? The large corporations who may not miss it. And even that, I just had a hard time saying, because I'm telling you, I'm about us doing business. But I'm just saying, it would be more likely that I'm like, okay, I'll take a discount. I'll take a gift card from, IKEA, But a business in my community, whether it's black owned, because we kindred, or a relative or friend, I'm paying full price. You need it. You need your revenue. And let me tell you something. There was a friend of mine. She passed. God rest her soul. Friend of mine I went to elementary with, private school. Her name was Natasha. And I remember I opened one of my businesses for the first time. I owned the beauty supply store. And that was my first one that I opened. And she came in she was a very lovely soul as well. Very good friend of the family. And she came in and she came to shop, right? And she was like just picking up stuff. And I could tell she was talking. We were like, she was happy for me. She was congratulating that I had the business, and she was picking up stuff, but I could tell she's just picking up stuff just to buy. And then she finally saw a wig that she really liked. She was like, oh, I like that. Let me get that. And the guy that gave it to her And as I'm ringing her up, I automatically gave her the friends and family discount. And she said, no, don't give me a discount. And I'm like, no, I'm giving you a discount. And she was like, I'm not supposed to get a discount. I'm your friend. Charge me full price. You need it. You just opened. That was the turning point in what I'm telling you right now. Because that was a moment in my mind. And this was, oh my gosh, almost 20 years ago. That it kind of shifted my approach in thinking. But, back then I was novice entrepreneur. Again, that's the kind of thing that we think in business. It's a punishment, right? Someone having to pay is a punishment. If you're providing a good quality service, it is not a punishment for someone to buy. As a matter of fact, it is a blessing for them to get it, especially if you price it right. I do believe in fair prices, however. I do believe in giving people a price that is worth more. The value of the thing that they got is worth more than the price they paid. I definitely 1,000% believe in that concept. Your full price is still a fair price. That's what it should be. So with her, back then, I'm still thinking like, I'm charging. It's a punishment. No. But when she said that, it was instant for me. Like, you know what? She's absolutely right. And it warmed my soul, to be quite honest, as she made that purchase. And she shopped with me regularly. And that's the approach, right? And then I've had instances where the very friends, I would have other friends that would come there to shop, and I'm not there. And because I'm not there, they left and said they'll come back another time. Now they're not in that area but once a month. So if they didn't shop then, I don't see that sale for another month. And that is also unfair to the business. And that's when, again, we're friends, right? We're not really thinking about stuff like that, especially when you've come from an environment like me. I wasn't raised in an environment where my family had friends that were all entrepreneurs. And so I had entrepreneur friends, and it was all rich with everybody with entrepreneurship around and ideas and stuff. That's not where I came from. So a lot of the people that are friends of, my businesses, they're not entrepreneurs. So they would understand that if they don't buy because I'm not there, I lost out on a sale. They're probably thinking like many people think when it comes to business, you got a business, so you got it made. You got a business, so it's doing well. Everything's great and everything's lovely because I can come in and I see all this inventory, not thinking that all this inventory is money that's tied up. You're not thinking that. So again, we have the bad etiquette. We want everyone to mentor us. We want everybody. We want all these service providers in our circles to offer advice without an invoice, and advice without invoice. We should coin that. Man. Advice without invoice. That's like a new thing we should talk about. They want advice without invoice. They want to be a client without paying. It destroys the root of our community. So again, that's number 4. Yep. Be friendly, but not friends. Because you don't want to establish too much of friends. But there's a lot of people that believe the more friends of that person becomes, the stronger their business becomes. Not necessarily so. That's a whole other concept. Now they can get a hookup somewhere else, like if someone works at a corporation or they're in charge of sponsorships. Yeah, if you're friends because that's not their money, we see the hookup there. In the networking, that kind of works when it's they get you approved for a contract, the government contract, because they're friends. That kind of stuff works there. But it's very difficult when it's your own money with entrepreneurship. Number 4, we got to kill the excuse culture. Do not allow excuses and don't create excuses. With your clients, you want to make sure that you're not a person that seeks a break, because your clients will then expect a break. If you're the person that's, sorry I'm late. I didn't have the premium product, so I'll give you the generic brand, but yet you still want to charge them the premium price. No, you got to give them the premium brand if that's what they were paying for, if you're providing a service, product, or whatever, and you don't need to be having those excuses, because then you create an excuse culture where now you got to accept excuses from those clients as well. And 5, stick with the agreement. In your relations with someone, you want to make sure you stick with the agreement. You do not want to be, varying, from the rules that have been set. You want to make sure that you stick with those things. Now, severing a client is just kind of explaining if you have not finished providing the goods and services, relationships not working out for whatever reason, you need to have cancellation agreements. Cancellation agreements protect you. I don't care if you didn't start the service. If they paid you money and they're asking for it back, you need to have a cancellation agreement and they need to sign it, because a couple things happens. The cancellation agreement removes you from liability. If that person comes back and say you didn't perform what you were supposed to do, the cancellation agreement would show that they signed it, you signed it, and you were severing the relationship. And also it protects you against fraud. Now, this is a thing that happens. People would pay you with funds that are not theirs, or funds that are not real, or whatever they did with these sometimes fake money orders or false checks, whatever, give it to you. The bank doesn't know it's bad yet, and then they're asking you to cancel, and then you give them real money back. Meanwhile, that money they gave you was no good in the first place. You need paper trail. You need paper trail to show that, okay? That's the second reason, all right? First, it protects you from getting out of the service that you're supposed to provide. 2, it removes you from, or it gives you the opportunity to pursue them if the funds wasn't legit, because you got a cancellation agreement. It shows what was going on. And of course, 3, you don't want to be held up for someone that may be trying to wash money. So it really depends on what level you're on with your business. We got some 8-figure clients watching this, gets advice from us, have been clients of mine, and the money that they have is largely at stake. Okay, we deal with clients that have a significant amount of money, making sure they're going the right direction. So if you're not there at that level just yet, I'm helping you. I'm coming from the future with advice to help you today, so that you make sure you don't make those kind of mistakes. Now, when you're discontinuing the relationship, you want to make sure that you give them a checklist. You get a exit survey, exit agreement. Of course, you want to follow up with a scheduled time frame to know when, to check in with them and see how everything's going. You want to get reviews. You want to get feedback, testimonies, all this stuff. You want to wrap that up in order to provide to the client. Now, reviews is a slippery thing, because people can give very, very false reviews and you haven't even done business with them. So there's a flaw in the review system. But I guess it's like a race, which is, again, entrepreneurs have better things to do. But if you gotta fight negative reviews by chasing people to give positive reviews, it's like a whole other thing. It's like you gotta hire people just to do that. Now, let me tell you something, entrepreneurs. Your because does not matter. Your because does not matter. The only thing that matters is your outcome. If you're unable to hit your goals because, if you're unable to start your business because, you're unable to go back to school because, you're unable to shoot your shot because, life does not care about your because. Life only cares about your become. Life will give you what you become, not giving a damn about your because. That closes out this episode. Don't forget, outgrow your yesterday. Until next time, peace.